If you're a super empath, you don't just love deeply, you feel deeply, you forgive deeply, and you've stayed far longer than you should have, even when your rational mind begged you to walk away. That's why, when you finally go no contact with a narcissist, your entire emotional system goes into shock, not just because you've left them, but because now you're confronting the part of yourself that once believed, if I just try a little harder, they'll change. But what you experience in the first 30 days of no contact isn't proof that you made a mistake. It's the emotional detox. It's your brain withdrawing from the addiction to their promises, their silence, your false hope, and that exhausting cycle of love, pain, apology, and repetition. Like any addiction, the first 30 days are the hardest, but if you can get through them, you'll start to see the world and yourself differently. As for the narcissist, they don't just notice your silence, they feel the loss of control, because for the first time, you're not responding, you're not explaining, you're not apologizing or trying to fix things. And to them, silence isn't just quiet. It's a direct blow to the ego that lives off your reactions. They won't let go without a fight. Expect accidental texts, vague posts on social media, mutual friends reaching out, maybe even pictures of a new partner. These are not signs of love, they're traps. Not because they miss you, but because they miss having control over you. And if you're not mentally prepared, you'll fall for it. You'll think it's just one reply. But it's not. That one reply is a signal. It tells them the door is still open, and just like that, all the strength you've built in silence begins to crumble. That's why this video isn't just a warning. It's a roadmap, a guide to help you navigate the emotional and psychological phases of no contact. So you'll know that every wave of confusion has a reason. Every urge to go back can be survived. And most importantly, you are not alone. If you've ever wondered why silence is so hard, this is your answer. Because for the first time in your life, you're not fighting to keep someone else. You're fighting to keep yourself. To understand why 30 days of silence has such a powerful impact on a narcissist, you first have to understand what they fear most: losing control. In the narcissist's world, relationships aren't based on love, they're based on dependency, specifically their dependency on emotional reactions from others. What psychologists call narcissistic supply. To them, you were never just a partner, a friend, or a companion. You were a living mirror, constantly reflecting back the version of themselves they wanted to believe in. Every admiring glance, every time you forgave, every effort you made to understand them, it was all addictive. And like any addict, they'll do anything to keep that supply going, even if it means making you doubt yourself, cross your own boundaries, and tolerate things you once swore you never would. Every time you react, whether with love or anger, you feed them. Narcissists don't distinguish between good or bad, positive or negative. To them, any reaction means you still care. A message full of blame has the same value as a message full of love. A single tear you shed holds the same weight as a desperate plea. All of it tells them you're still playing the game, and they're still in control. But when you step out of that game, when you enter no contact, something terrifying happens inside them. They can no longer see themselves through your eyes. They can't measure their importance through your responses. And because their sense of self isn't built from within, but relies entirely on outside reflection, they begin to unravel. You need to understand this. A narcissist doesn't have a stable sense of identity. They don't truly know who they are without someone to reflect off of, manipulate, or reshape. When you go silent, you're not just denying them a target. You're forcing them to face the emptiness they've been running from their entire lives. And to them, that's not just loneliness, it's ego death. They can't handle no contact because it forces them to face what they fear the most: being invisible. Narcissists crave attention not because they want to be loved, but because attention is oxygen for their empty ego. When you cut off that supply, you do something they never thought possible. You take away their oxygen. And here's the dangerous part. They never expect it. Narcissists live under the assumption that you'll always come back, that you're too kind, too empathetic, too emotionally soft to ever walk away for good. That's why they don't take your warnings seriously. But when you actually leave, and leave in silence, they panic. That panic doesn't always show on the outside. They might act indifferent, post happy pictures, and pretend their life is better than ever, but that's just the mask. Inside, they're going through withdrawal. Their nervous system has no feedback to feed on. Their mind spirals in helplessness because they can't get a reaction out of you. No contact, to them, feels like a devastating loss of power, one they don't know how to cope with. That's why they'll do anything to break it. Sweet messages, vague apologies, guilt trips aimed at your compassion, all designed to hook you back in. But here's what you must remember. They don't want to reconnect. They want to regain control. Your silence robs them of the ability to read you, to measure their effect on you, and that makes them feel more invisible than anything else. Narcissists aren't afraid of being hated, they're afraid of being forgotten. Because when you hate them, you're still thinking about them. When you're angry, you're still reacting. But when you no longer mention them, no longer respond, no longer get triggered, that's when you've truly stepped out of their grip. And that, more than anything, is what truly hurts them. Not the loss of a relationship, but the loss of their mirror. The mirror they depended on to feel real, to feel important, to feel powerful. PH1. Days 1-10. Detox and the emotional craving. The first days of no contact feel like an addiction without a cure. Every part of your body resists the decision to cut ties. You check your phone constantly, dream about them, and imagine that maybe just one message could make everything right again. But the truth is, you're not addicted to them. You're addicted to the feeling you once attached to that relationship. And this is when the toxic programming of emotional submission starts screaming to survive. You miss them not because they're worth missing, but because your brain is trying to decode pain using old scripts. Maybe I overreacted. Maybe they didn't mean to hurt me. What if it was partly my fault? This is the residue of prolonged gaslighting, the kind that leaves you unsure of what's real and what's manipulation. These early days also confront you with the raw silence of being alone. No more good morning texts, no more chaotic hours-long calls. As dysfunctional as it was still something. And now you're standing in the quiet, haunted by voices asking, am I destroying something that could have been beautiful? But this is the detox. You're not destroying anything, you're healing. Every time you resist the craving for connection, stop yourself from texting or delete a message before hitting send, you're breaking the dependency loop that the narcissist planted in you. You're not getting weaker, you're coming back to life. PHAZ2, days 11-20. Clarity begins to surface. After the first 10 days, your emotions begin to shift. You may still miss them, but the illusions begin to fade. Instead, you start seeing clearly the parts of the story that were once blurry, the times they made you cry, only to flip the script so that you had to apologize. The times you held back, held on, and tried to love hard enough to keep the relationship from falling apart, only to be told you were too sensitive. This is when you begin to reframe your entire reality. You no longer need someone else to confirm if you were right or wrong, because you're starting to validate yourself. Your notes, journal entries, even old messages now serve as a map to help you reclaim your sense of self. No, I wasn't crazy. I was emotionally manipulated. And yet, this truth brings its own kind of pain. The pain of realizing you endured far more than you should have. The pain of remembering how deeply you believed, how fiercely you hoped. But don't let that pain pull you backward. Because it's not the pain of loss, it's the pain of awakening. At this stage, the narcissist might reappear, softer, more self-aware. They might offer an apology or something subtle like, just wanted to know if you're okay. But you don't need that question anymore, because you're learning how to ask yourself that and truly listen to the answer. PH3, days 20 to 130, moratorium of will, awakening and emotional freedom. This is the phase where you begin stepping into a new version of yourself. You no longer feel the need to react. You're not wrestling with should I text back. You don't open messages just to close them again. You're no longer wide awake, heart pounding at the sound of a notification. Instead, you begin to feel a peace that doesn't depend on anyone, not because they've disappeared, but because your fear of losing them has, and you realize throughout the relationship what you were truly afraid of losing wasn't the other person. It was the version of yourself you thought only existed when they approved of you. This is also when you come to one of the most powerful truths. They were never capable of loving you the way you needed to be loved. Not because you weren't enough, but because they were never capable, period. And now, that truth no longer hurts. It frees you. You start to come alive again. Gently, steadily. You write in your journal not through tears, but through gratitude for the courage it took to walk away. You look in the mirror and start to see the light in your eyes again. The same light you thought was lost, but was only dimmed by a love that was never real. And when you cross that 30-day mark, not through willpower, but through clear awareness, you'll understand. No contact isn't just a boundary with a narcissist. It's a boundary between the you who once accepted less and the you who now knows your worth. If you think a narcissist will quietly disappear when you go silent, think again. The truth is, no contact is a red-lit trigger that activates their entire arsenal of manipulation tactics. They don't care how much pain you're in. They only care that they've lost their grip on you. And in the world of someone who survives off narcissistic supply, that loss is unacceptable. So, what will they do during the first 30 days of your silence? A lot. And not with overt aggression, but with subtle, calculated moves disguised as harmless gestures. 1. The accidental message. Pretending to be casual to reopen the door. The first tactic is accidental contact. A vague emoji, a random question like, "Do you still have my jacket?" Or an old photo out of nowhere. There's no direct message, just enough to make you wonder, do they still care? But the truth is, they don't care how you're doing. They care whether you're still easy to trigger. And if you reply, even politely, you've just turned on the green light for a brand new cycle. To them, a single response means you're still bendable. 2. The vague apology. Half admission, half blame. If the bait doesn't work, they'll apologize. But this isn't a real apology. It's things like, "I know I messed up, but you also," or "If only you had understood me better." It makes you feel seen, while still quietly blaming you. Why? Because this kind of apology keeps you locked in as partly at fault. It plays on your empathy and reopens the door for their re-entry. 3. The new person, manufactured jealousy to provoke a reaction. If the soft approach fails, they'll try to trigger jealousy. A photo holding hands with someone new, a cryptic story about someone special, or a post with language that sounds eerily familiar. None of this means they've moved on. It's all to see if you're still emotionally reactive. To a narcissist, jealousy is one of the strongest signals that they still have emotional power over you. Your reaction, even a message like, "I thought you loved me," is the exact supply they crave. 4. The messenger, using others to break through. When they can't get through the front door, they'll try every side window. They might ask mutual friends to check in, post vague updates online, or have a family member pop into your inbox, a mother, a sibling, a cousin. Why? Because if they can't reach you directly, they'll try to reach you through guilt. This tactic is especially effective on super empaths, people who soften when others seem caught in the middle. But you must remember, every message from someone else is a test of the boundary you've set. 5. The perfect version. Reenacting the love-bombing phase. When you don't respond, They may transform publicly into the ideal partner. On social media, they become deep, grateful, hardworking, suddenly healing. But don't mistake it for growth. It's a carefully staged performance. For one viewer, they're hoping you'll think he's really changing. But the truth is, if that change doesn't happen in the silence, without needing your attention, then it isn't change, it's bait. And once the super empath returns, the narcissist snaps right back to their old self. 6. The victim card, weaponizing guilt and emotional distress. When all else fails, they play their last card. I've lost everything. I'm not eating. I can't sleep. Don't you know how much I'm hurting? They post depressing statuses. They say you were the only light in their life. But this isn't a cry for help. It's a trap aimed straight at your softest point, your compassion. Super empaths are most vulnerable to this, because you don't want to hurt someone, even if they've hurt you. But remind yourself, their pain isn't from losing you. It's from losing their ability to control you. 7. The combo attack, layering tactics to shake your defense. When you're too grounded to fall for one tactic, they stack them. A message, then silence. A new post, then deletion. A nostalgic memory, then sudden coldness. This is when they create confusion, to breed confusion. Their goal is to make you second-guess your decision, to wonder if maybe, just maybe, there's still something worth saving. Don't fall for it. None of it is random. Every move is timed, targeted, and strategic, all designed to do one thing: pull you back into your old role. Once you understand each of these tactics, you'll see clearly. No contact isn't you ignoring someone, it's you accepting that you're no longer their mirror. All manipulation only works if you react, but once you see it, you can't be controlled by it anymore, and in that clarity, you become untouchable. At first, you might think no contact is simply a defensive move, a way to escape the narcissist and press pause on the chaos. But the deeper you go into this intentional silence, the more you realize a much greater truth. No contact isn't just about cutting ties with them. It's the beginning of a full psychological reset for you. One of the first and most powerful shifts is in your perception. You begin to look back on events not through the lens of love, but through the lens of truth. What once looked like apologies now reveal themselves as cycle resets. What felt like care now appears as calculated control. And you ask yourself, why didn't I see this before? The answer is, because you once loved too purely, and now you're learning how to love without sacrificing truth. The second transformation is reclaiming your emotional energy. In the past, every word from the narcissist felt like a call to respond, to explain, to soothe, to maintain peace. But now you're learning the art of doing nothing. You realize that your response is not an obligation, it's a resource, and you have the right to choose where and with whom that resource is invested. From there, you begin the reconstruction of your identity. In a narcissistic relationship, your boundaries were dissolved. You were understanding, so you were always flexible. You put others first because you saw their pain. But now you understand. Empathy does not mean enduring harm. And you start rebuilding boundaries, not out of fear, but out of the quiet belief that I deserve respect, even if no one else agrees with me. Step by step, you reconnect with your intuition, the voice that was once drowned out by manipulation. Intuition is that quiet sense that something felt off, but you ignored it for fear of losing the relationship. Now, you no longer silence it. You trust that whisper, and for the first time in a long time, you're not living in someone else's emotional weather. You're standing in the center of your own. Something beautiful begins to happen in this stage. You feel peace, and you don't need to explain it. No one is hijacking your mood with a single text. No more anxiety at every notification. No more pressure to keep up appearances or decode vague posts online. Just you, in your space, with a calm that no longer needs justification. In psychology, this is called the restoration of emotional autonomy, the ability to manage your inner world without needing external validation. And here's the miracle. When you stand firmly in this place, the narcissist loses all power. They can talk, perform, provoke, but you're no longer the mirror. You're the unshakable surface that doesn't absorb a thing. From here, you also begin to reclaim the parts of yourself you once abandoned. The hobbies that were mocked as pointless, the sensitivities that were labeled too much, the dreams that were dismissed as unrealistic, all of it returns. No external voice gets to define you anymore. You don't need permission to simply be yourself. And finally, perhaps most importantly, you learn something you never knew before. You can love without trying to save. In the past, you loved in order to heal, to help them become their best self. But now, you understand, true love doesn't seek to change anyone. It simply recognizes who is worthy of entering the peaceful world you're building. And if they don't honor that peace, you no longer stay behind to teach them how. Till a narcissist is placed in a state of no contact, especially by a super empath, they're not just being left behind. They're being cut off from the very energy source that's been feeding their ego for so long. And that doesn't simply hurt. It triggers a kind of internal collapse they cannot control. At first, they'll deny it. They'll tell their friends, their social media audience, even themselves, that they don't care, that you were the problem, you were weak, too sensitive, or worse, that you are the one manipulating through silence. But all of those words are desperate attempts to fill the terrifying void your absence has left behind. The truth is, narcissists don't fear losing love, they fear losing control. And when you stop texting, stop apologizing, stop explaining, and stop trying to understand them, every manipulation tactic they've used to keep you in their power structure crumbles. They're left with no tools, no leverage, and that makes them feel a kind of emptiness they don't know how to handle. Your silence doesn't just take away a source of supply, it forces them to confront the one thing they've avoided most, themselves. In the stillness you've created, there's no more noise to drown out their inner world, no one left to blame, no mirror left to maintain the mask. And because their inner self isn't built on stable identity, the loss of you sends them into an identity crisis. Some narcissists will react by immediately jumping into a new relationship, but let's be clear, that's not love. It's a reflex replacement. They need someone else to define who they are. They need to keep feeling important, desirable, in control. But no matter how many new mirrors they find, none of them erase the truth. They no longer control you. Others will shift into covert attack mode, smearing your name, distorting the story, trying to convince others that you were the aggressor. But this isn't because you were wrong. It's because they cannot stand the fact that you walked away without needing to be understood. In their world, controlling the narrative is how they survive, and when you no longer play along, they lose the ability to write the next scene. What hurts the narcissist most isn't being hated by you. It's when you go silent, peacefully, when you're no longer angry, when you're no longer hurting over them, when they no longer have the power to impact your emotions. They finally realize that their presence in your world is over. And to them, that is the cruelest kind of exile. No contact for a narcissist is a death sentence to their control. It is the disintegration of a dependent ego. It's a declaration that says, you no longer have power over me, and I no longer feel the need to respond to you. It's a door that closes, not with a slam, but with impenetrable stillness. And in that silence, though they'll never admit it, they know one thing for certain: they've lost the one thing they can't manipulate back into existence. A super empath who has awakened, and to them, that's not just loss, that's total defeat. Many super empaths end up breaking no contact on day 3, day 10, or even day 29, not because they're weak, but because they haven't fully grasped the immense psychological value of completing the full 30-day journey. There's a reason why the number 30 is seen as a golden benchmark in the process of leaving a toxic relationship. It's not just a block of time, it's the stage where your emotional reflexes and nervous system begin the process of full recalibration. Think of your brain as a field of soil. During your time with the narcissist, the seeds they planted in you were messages like, "You're too sensitive," "No one else will love you like I do," or "You need me to feel worthy." Over time, those beliefs took root. But when you start no contact, you begin uprooting those old weeds. Each day you don't respond is a day you refuse to water their conditioning, and instead you start planting the seeds of self-respect, awareness, and emotional independence. Neuroscience tells us it takes roughly 21 to 30 days to create new neural pathways that override old emotional patterns. That's exactly why the final days of no contact are often the hardest. You think you've made it, that you're strong enough now. But in truth, you're standing at the threshold of your mental reprogramming. This isn't the time to ease up. This is the time to stay the most grounded. In those quiet days, you're not just distancing yourself from them, you're reprogramming your inner voice. Where once you heard familiar whispers like, "You're not good enough," now you begin to hear your own voice say, "I deserve peace." This is the most profound transformation, the moment you no longer need anyone else to validate your worth because you finally see yourself clearly. One of the most liberating realizations after the 30-day mark is this: you're no longer afraid of silence. Before, you responded just to fill the void, but now you understand that silence isn't emptiness. It's the space where your heart finally speaks, and you begin to love that space. You journal more, you sleep better, you eat on time. You're no longer caught in someone else's chaos. You've returned to your original inner calm. Most importantly, after 30 days, you gain something no one else can ever take from you: perspective. When your emotions are no longer being manipulated, you can finally see the past relationship for what it truly was. You no longer need an apology. You no longer crave closure. You no longer look for approval. Everything you needed has already been built, one silent, strong day at a time. So, whether today is day 5, day 15, or day 29, remember this: every day you endure is a silent but powerful declaration to the world and to yourself. I no longer need to suffer in order to be loved. I no longer need to react in order to exist. And I no longer need anyone else to define my worth. You're not silent because you're angry. You didn't walk away because you stopped loving, and you didn't go no contact to get revenge. The truth is, you stayed far longer than most people would have. You forgave far more than was reasonable. And you tried so hard that somewhere along the way, you lost sight of what it was costing you. So when you chose no contact, especially when you committed to the full 30 days, you weren't running away. You were standing tall in front of the pain you once tried to cover with love, standing tall in front of the truth you once made excuses to avoid, and most of all, standing tall in front of yourself. No longer hiding, no longer bowing, no longer hoping in the wrong direction. To the narcissist, your silence is their greatest defeat, not because you disappeared, but because you no longer need their validation. When you go quiet, you strip away their power to define reality. You stop waiting for the apology that will never come. You simply reclaim every ounce of power you once gave away. Silence, in the hands of someone who was once manipulated, is not emptiness. It's a declaration. A declaration that says, I'm not in this game anymore. Not because you lost, but because you woke up and realized you no longer need to win. Super empaths aren't weak. They're warriors, carrying hearts too pure for a battlefield rigged with illusion. But when they finally see themselves clearly, they don't need weapons. They don't need revenge. They need only one thing, the decision to no longer pour their energy into what drains them, and to use all that light to rebuild themselves. And that is what makes the narcissist truly powerless to ever hurt you again.